Alright, here we go. People, happy Thursday, everyone! Happy Thursday! How have you been, guys? Hope you had a great week. Well, it's still not over, since we stream on Thursdays precisely. But hope you had a happy week. We haven't seen each other since Tuesday. And as you can see, today is a very, I don't know if you can see it there. Well, you can see it a bit, that it's a very gray day over here. Pretty dismissed. There we go. There we go. Everything seems to be working. As you can see, it's a pretty gray day here. Stormy day. There's no rain, but yeah, cloudy. Extremely cloudy and foggy. Um, we're in the middle of the winter right here. We're streaming, broadcasting from Fairwinds, Argentina, the capital. And as you can see here, you can see that we're in the middle of the winter. It's exactly the opposite as the northern hemisphere. Quite an interesting phenomenon that we have the winter on July and August, on those months. In those months. Right, people. Right. So, day number 39 of review.
Do not bring glory to the Inquisition.
Indeed. Last time you must be wondering if you missed the previous stream, where the heck are ya, Eraser? Well, we're in the middle of an underground cave. Let's begin with the recap, but before we begin, thanks to Ike9000 for being the 9th Discord member from the bottom of my heart. I truly appreciate it, Ike. Deep thanks from the bottom of my heart. Remember, as I always say, the Discord is open to all followers of the channel. Another thing, please, Pixel Generator, I cannot recognize your account precisely over at Discord. I presume it's you, Olympus1982, from last week that you followed the stream. So anyways, thanks from the bottom of my heart for following the stream and joining the Discord server. But please, if you don't mind, I would like to see if it's the same.
Let's see.
If it's the corresponding to each account. So I wrote you a message. If you're watching this as a YouTube bot, please tell me that Pixel Generator is precisely Olympus1982. If it's not you, then to the person, please, if you joined the Discord server through YouTube, please tell me your who you are so I can recognize you, at least for future references, like assigning moderation roles and having the server organized. I like to know precisely who is who, because if I cannot recognize you, then I don't know who you are at all. So please, if you are watching this Pixel Generator over at Discord, please, if you don't mind, some seconds, please reply to my message so I can recognize who you are, because otherwise I don't know who you are. As I said, deep thanks to Ike9000 from the bottom of my heart for discovering my reviews and appreciating my crazy content with my metaphysical analysis and everything. Alright, yes, a special thanks to Yoshimiro and of course also to Pekaren for subscribing over at YouTube. Both of the subscriptions were private, but so I cannot see your usernames, but I know that it was both of you. So thanks, Yoshimiro, and of course, Pekaren. I mentioned this on Tuesday, but I'll repeat it again. I cannot display our usual message because the subscriptions weren't public, but thanks from the bottom of my heart, nevertheless. Good. Pretty well. I think we are done with all of the Twitch followers, YouTube subscribers, and everything. Let's begin with a recap, people. A quick recap. Eraser, where the heck are ya in these stormy days? In this stormy day here at the end of the world here in Argentina, close to Antarctica. Well, people, last time, as you can see, we are there, but we are actually not there. We are underground. We are underground in a dungeon that started precisely in some cave over here, No, it was right over here, right at the end of the map, right at the edge. Last time I spent a whole hour getting to this zone, to this closed location. If you haven't watched the previous stream, pretty much we had some quests here, and eventually an objective appeared over here, and it was underground. There's a whole underground network below
What's going
Dryad
on?
Island.
What's the holdup?
I'm doing the recap, Inquisitor. Shut up. And as you can see, we are here, but actually we are here. Actually, we are roughly at this location. So it took me, I spent 2 hours trying to get into Dryad Village here. Inside of Dryad Village, there's another network of kind of like Ewok homes. We got on those, we crossed this bridge. I explored all of this zone as well as I could. We explored everything. Not as well as I could, I explored everything. I eventually found the entrance to the dungeon, and basically, too long don't read, this location is inaccessible from outside. This is an enclosed location that we couldn't access from the outside. I had to explore everything, get all the way, all the way over here, up here. I unlocked the portal, and from here, I went over here. Here I got lost again, because there are those Ewok homes, and since it took me so much time to get to this bridge that leads into this closed location, pretty much, I decided to finish all quests in this location right away. So as you can see, I focused on this zone, and today I want to focus on Dryad Village quests, right? So today we will focus our efforts on doing all quests here over at Dryad Village. We will get lost, it's inevitable, because as you can see, there are a lot of dungeons here. It was a trap besides, because the quest that we got gave us kind of like 5-6 pirate escortees on Tuesday, and those pirate escortees basically filled up all of my slots. In this game, there's a limit regarding how many quests you can pick up regarding your escortees. You cannot escort more than 5 or 6 people, and you can't grab any more quests. So that stopped my progress. But today, people, as a quick recap of what we did on Tuesday, we spent 5 hours. Highly recommend you watch the stream, the VOD. Well, it's up over at Twitch, because then it'll be months until it's up over at YouTube. And I decided to finish all of the quests here. Today we'll focus on Dryad Village, and we will begin by getting out of this crazy dungeon. We did a world boss. This is a massive dungeon. Let me show it to you a bit. Let me Alt-Tab so I can flash the memory of the game a bit. There we go. Let me show you roughly where we are. Yeah, but we were teleported outside last time. But it recorded my location here. Well, just so I roughly show you, that is a huge dungeon. So you can see up over here. So we get our so we warm up. Sorry. So we get up to speed. So we warm up. So we get our bones moving. So we move our skeletons. You can see here, it's a massive dungeon that this leads you to another sub-dungeon, to another one. But well, we're not gonna do this today. But basically, as you can see, the dungeon goes all the way from here to here. We will use the portal and begin with Dryad Village, because we've already explored this dungeon 100%. The topic of analysis for today will be enemy variety, and looks like we begin straight away, because I have 2 escortees. We have,
since here comes the Inquisition to judge all godless heretics who defile true faith.
He loves talking so much. I love this Inquisitor. I don't think there's an option to kind of like define the chatter. The other day I got a game called Atlas Fallen. It's quite modern, highly recommend it. It's by Focus Home Interactive, a company that usually we don't talk a lot about. And that one you could choose the frequency of the dialogue. Let's get to the topic of analysis for today, people. Just so you have a reference, today we will explore enemy mechanics. Let me drop these two escortees. What's the mission regarding these ones? Dryad Warrior, but the name of the quest? Nothing. Nothing. Nothing at all. God damn it. For today, we will analyze enemy variety and their mechanics. Enemy mechanics variety and the impact of enemy mechanics variety on the gameplay mechanics, because it's something. Last time we explored the fact that the min-maxing as a paradigm system, as part of the stat system of the game, as part of the framework of the stat system of the game. We explored min-maxing, and we came to the conclusion that min-maxing is not present in Sacred 2, and that, as a consequence, I'll explain it as we begin the quest, it basically creates a whole defensive system that is not present in a lot of modern RPG games and even games back in the day, so it was quite unique. Alright, let's begin. 10 minutes roughly. Good. To begin with, the Dryad Escort, where do I have to drop these two Dryads? It's the question. Because I cannot see the quest. Why are they escorting me? We still need to do the fucking Harlequin here. Poisoner, Scorpion Tail. Ah, look at that. We still have to do those in the previous chapter. Don't worry. We'll do them. We'll do 100% completion. And here, mutated. The country needs new trees. Because the blood rays are cutting me when the dream are dirty, I'm gonna change it. No, but I will do this fast. I'll play make a right, man. To a considerable amount. The ghost wants me to ask Shaman Sikoria in Deer Lake how to lift the curse. No. The prisoner. Where are the Dryads? Where? Mutated. The Dryad Huntress did not return. The other Huntress is feared she might be dead. The Dryad also spoke to man. But now she's in show. I'm supposed to make sure everything okay and defeat the monster, whatever it is. Officer Shurana has me to my energy. Satina, blood, well, whatever the fuck. I think they can survive it. If we fail the quest, it will tell us which quest it is. So, well, let's begin with all of them. Let me begin by grabbing the quests, and let's begin. As I was mentioning, let's begin the analysis. Get your engines ready, people, because today it's a very important topic. The impact of enemy variety and enemy mechanics variety on the gameplay mechanics. Why is it important? Because on Tuesday we explored precisely min-maxing as a stat system, as a paradigm in the framework of the stat system of the game. And we came to the conclusion, the very important conclusion, that I will refresh it for all of you, that, for those of you joining us right now or watching this as a YouTube VOD, that Sacred 2 manages to create a system, a gameplay system, in which the player is naturally encouraged. I won't go over all of it again, it was 2 hours of analysis after all. The player is encouraged to naturally distribute his stat points in a balanced way, and that has a lot of consequences. For example, the fact that the player cannot survive encounters by just spending points on min-maxing, as we usually call this phenomenon, which is basically spending your strength if you're a warrior, a mage, on intelligence if you are a mage, or on agility if you are a rogue. Basically, just increasing your basic attacks. You just spend your stat points on those 3 stats, on those 3 categories, and the direct consequence is that you increase your base attack, and through the increase of your base attack, you are able to overcome all of the learning curve of said game. That's basically min-maxing. It's a phenomenon that we can encounter in the classic Blizzard stat system, for example, Diablo, um, Titan Quest, any isometric Torchlight, The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing, Shadows Awakening, Victor Brand, etc., etc. All isometric action RPGs that we stumble upon nowadays. And they have min-maxing as a phenomenon, inherited from the classic Blizzard system. Compared to Sacred 2, scored me too well than I. I've been the news and mine in the forum once again. It's a very rare treat to try to say that that's rubbish. Being right, it's quite sure. The wood is highly sought after, and the Snomish High Elves pay large sums for it. This region is dangerous, though. Would you escort me? Another escort quest. Perfect. We have more. See, I couldn't pick up, or I couldn't pick up all of these quests due to the troll trap quest that we had the other day. It was like kind of like 5 parrots in just one quest. Right. Uh-huh. What else do we have here? Here? Let's go to the north. Apparently it's leading us to the north. Compared to Sacred 2. Compared to Sacred 2. The min-maxing paradigm in the framework of the stat system compared to Sacred 2. In Sacred 2, you are encouraged to, as I said, to distribute your stats in a balanced way. As you can see, I have roughly the same amount of dexterity, intelligence, and vitality. Briefly speaking, we talked about this extensively on Tuesday, just so newcomers have a reference, or anyone watching this as a pod. Intelligence increases your basic attack. This would be in the normal min-maxing paradigm. Just increase your basic attack, and you can kill enemies like in Diablo 3 faster than the amount of time that it would take to the developers to design a defensive gameplay system. In Diablo 3, there's only an offensive gameplay system. The same for a lot of modern isometric action RPG games. Right. Then I discovered that through dexterity, this is a very brief summary. A very brief summary, people. But just so you have a reference, because this is linked to what we are gonna analyze today. I discovered that dexterity is evasion chance, it contributes to evasion chance, and it's needed to survive even the most basic of encounters. But that was not enough, and then I realized that I had to invest points on vitality, which increases my total amount of hit points, the total amount of my health pool, as you can see there, almost 5,000, and I commented that we did a much more extensive analysis. We took a look at other aspects of all of the consequences from this initial analysis about the stats, but roughly there you have the reference. And then I came to the conclusion that you needed vitality to survive boss encounters, because even if you could evade a lot of attacks, they could kill you in one blow. Perfect. That balanced distribution of stats is what allowed the developers of Sacred 2 to create a perfectly balanced system in which the player has to deal with a defensive gameplay, mechanics, something that we don't see nowadays. In most modern isometric action RPG games, the player basically only needs to increase his basic attack, the phenomenon that we call min-maxing, and roughly another secondary stat like critical chance, and with that, essentially, the player is allowed by the developers when they design the gameplay system of the game to be effective in combat without caring about a defensive gameplay system. One of the crowning achievements of Sacred 2 is that it created a gameplay system in which not only the player is encouraged to care about attacks, about offensive stats, but also about defensive stats.
Here comes prey.
Also defensive stats, because of that evasion chance, because of your vitality, because of that there's also regeneration, the ability to modify cooldowns, which can affect defensive abilities, like for example Paralyzing Dread, which decreases enemy attack speed around the player, for example, and I'm sure the other classes have other stats. Hey, it was the other way. What am I doing? What am I doing? it was the other way around. Pretty much, we came to that conclusion. That Sacred 2, one of the crowning achievements is of its stat system, is that it has that invisible extra 50% of the gameplay mechanics that is usually ignored nowadays. And we only care about min-maxing, increasing your basic attack damage and critical rating, and you can kill enemies faster, and the player psychologically doesn't have to care at all about a defensive gameplay system or anything at all. Like, the player does not need to care about anything. Perfect. So there's an extra invisible 50% gameplay system that is not present in a lot of modern games. Here in Sacred 2 we have to care about evasion and vitality. Good. Then on top of that layer we have the elemental system of the game, which is used as well both defensively and offensively. And that leads us to the topic of analysis for today, guys. Quite interesting. Because just as 50% of the gameplay mechanics are usually ignored nowadays by not implementing a defensive system, this one is poison. By not implementing a defensive system in the gameplay mechanics of the game, just as I mentioned that last time. Hey, where's the objective there? One in a million? I think it's one of those. Well, let's begin with that one. Let's begin exploring up north. Apparently that quest has to do with a rare drop or something like that. We're exploring the northern section of the jungle anyways. Let me see. Oh, uncharted territory. It can't be that bad as what happened to us last time. Let me explore the place. Let me see that everything is... Hey, looks like there we had to turn in one from last time. Well, going back to the analysis. Just as 50% of the gameplay mechanics that are this invisible section that is usually ignored. Generally in Diablo you can just care about attack and not care... and what's this? Without you, this family will be lost. Weird. This quest doesn't have a reference as to where to start it. Then we'll begin with bloody rituals. Just like, as I've said, that 50% of the gameplay mechanics is ignored, there's another 50% that is ignored. Precisely the title of today's stream. The enemy variety and their gameplay mechanics. Oh, pretty interesting. Speaking about enemy variety. And this will also be related to the elemental system of the game. So far, I've based my analysis of the endgame gameplay mechanics on the player. Because of everything that I just did as a recap, 50% of the gameplay mechanics, the attack of the player, the attack, the accuracy rating, the evasion, as I've said, all of these stats that involve player combat performance, right? But today I wanted to focus on the other side of the gameplay mechanics. Enemy variety and mechanics. The first element that I wanted to introduce today, this one, there we go, Bloody Dryads. Are you here to save us? Thank you very much. There we go. Escort, we have to bring them back. On the other element. Enemy variety and mechanics. And the first element that I wanted to introduce is the huge difference that sets apart a huge portion of MMORPGs, modern RPGs, and isometric action RPGs from the others.
Death
There are
comes
games
alone.
in which there isn't there's a dissociation
This is
between the stat system imposed to the player by the developers. There's a dissociation between that and the one implemented on the mobs. It doesn't matter the level of the mob, if it's a world boss, an elite world boss, a normal mob, a normal standard mob, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is that there's a huge difference. Some games, like Borderlands, have very different stats implemented on the mobs when compared to the player. And some other games manage to create a cohesive system which works in tandem in such a way that player imposed stats are shared across with mobs, regardless of the level of that mob, with their class system. There's a shared stat system between player and mobs. That's the first element that I wanted to introduce. For example, in Borderlands, you free the family and you can do it.
that was almost too easy.
Easy, people. I only had to use my instinct. There we go. So, first one down. Some to go. The country needs to increase. We also had that one. Let's head right over there. Let's continue with that one. And basically, this element will set the difference. Because in Sacred 2, contrary to Borderlands, we need to take a look at the degree of similarities between the stat system imposed to the mobs and the stat system imposed to the player. In Sacred 2, there's a high degree of similarities. A high degree of similarities. You must be thinking, Eraser, but that's extremely subtle. Who would care about that? It's important, people. It's important because it's much more difficult. It's much more difficult for a developer. It's much more difficult to make to create those two stat systems and make them compatible. By compatible, I mean that there's a correlation between the stats that are possible for the player and the stats that are given to the mobs, that are possible to achieve for the player and the mobs. It's difficult to establish a balanced compatibility of a shared system. It's much more difficult to establish a system in which the mobs share stats with the player in a cohesive way and difficulty is balanced. That's the second element that I wanted to introduce precisely. Balance with the balance of a shared stat system with difficulty. What the fuck? The spider has a quest for us? That's, you know. What on earth? I didn't know that they could that let me change to poison. So we have a mutated spider being a quest giver. That's an interesting turn of events. It's the first time it happens. The monster. I love the game. The name. The monster. The monster. That's the name of the quest giver. Alright, but it's quite... I mean, you wouldn't know the name. It's pretty realistic if you think about it. Did you... Spider voice. Did my dear sisters... No, that's kind of like the lizard voice. Did my dear sisters send you... Stop staring at me. I'm not a monster. I'm Lida... Liadelia. And yesterday I had 2 arms and a head. Now I have 8 legs and poisonous claws. Yeah, it's a second variation. You know that spiders come in 2 variations. 6 legs or 8. This all because of that cursed energy. I guess I ventured too far when I was hunting, and then I turned into giant spiders. I hate spiders. You know, at first I didn't notice it I only realized something was wrong when my sister ran away from me screaming and then came back and attacked me with a spear. What am I going to do now? Well,
Glory and power.
what a conundrum, people, what a conundrum. Hemi, I beg you, take me to a safe place so that I... What do you want? Are you going to attack me? How would I take that thing to a safe place? I had no choice. I mean, my doppelganger killed it. Bad doppelganger. What's the meaning of this shit? Don't tell me I failed the quest because of...
Your death came almost too easily.
God damn it. What the fuck was that? Well, not failed at least. Alright, people. Alright, that was interesting, but I need to go here. The country needs new trees. Going back to the analysis before that hilarious situation. Enemy mechanics variety. Enemy mechanics variety. If we take into account that enemy variety, just as I said, that 50% of the gameplay mechanics is the defensive portion of the gameplay system, not only the attacks that are completely, all of that defensive system is non-existent if you precisely incur in min-maxing, as we mentioned on Tuesday. Just as that's 50% of the player gameplay mechanics, now we'll take a look at the global 50% of gameplay mechanics in general as a framework. For the gameplay mechanics of the game, the player deals damage through attacks, the player defends against attacks if the game has a defensive system, and then the other 50% would be the attacks and the defense of enemies, which is directly affected by the element that we're going to analyze. Precisely. Enemy variety. Well, how do most RPGs handle enemy mechanics variety in general?
Love of separatists. I will guide.
First of all, the first thing that we cannot avoid mentioning is that there's a dissociation, as I said, between the stat system given to the player and the one given to the mobs. Taking for granted that it's a shared system. The other element is that you can implement the elemental system, in the case of Sacred 2, Borderlands, and a lot of other ones. You can implement the full elemental system, or you can... Why are you killing them? Don't kill my escortees. I mean, I'm going to fail the quest any second now. I better save before that happens. What are you doing? Don't kill my escortees. Please. There we go. Attack me. Attack me. Here. All attacks here. Basically, we can implement, or the developers can implement, to be precise,
Ghost stories anymore.
an elemental system on the mobs. As you can see there, if you pay attention to the mobs that I have been healing, they have the same stats as I do. There you can see, up there, these ones, for example, deal physical and fire damage, and they have physical, magic, and a bit of magic, and poison resistant, according to the colors. Generally, what most games do, and here is once again a moment in which the elemental system of Sacred 2 shines. A lot of games simply have general elemental resistances. For example, World of Warcraft, if I'm not mistaken. It only has elemental resistances, in general. It doesn't do a sub-classification of them at all. It doesn't do it. I think that guy's gonna die any day. No. Where do I have to drop this guy? What's the quest? Because he's gonna get killed. No? Ah, there, he recovered health. Good. It's not that bad. Where do I have to drop this guy? I don't feel comfortable. 1 in a million. Ah, the one that was over there. Country needs new trees. Should be close. Let's go over there. So, yes, basically, the elemental system in Sacred 2 plays a big role. Because, as you can see, monsters, there's a correlation, there's a direct correlation between the stat system imposed to the player and the stat system imposed to the mobs. And not only that enhances, there we go, whatever that was, we are progressing, we are making progress. And that correlation should be appreciated because the degree of abstract complexity of establishing a shared stat system between enemies and player, as I said, it's a much higher degree of complexity, people, that reviewers usually don't take into account, and it's quite important because it's much more difficult to achieve balance. That's the key. In a shared system, it's much more difficult to achieve balance. If on top of that we add the extra layer of variety of having a four-pronged, a four-dimensional, five-dimensional because we also have physical damage, five-dimensional elemental system of damage and defenses, both for the player and mobs, if we add that extra element on top of that initial complexity that I mentioned of establishing a balanced correlation between the imposed stat systems when comparing the player and the mobs, when we take all of that into account, we get a high degree of abstract complexity of enemy design. That's the key. That extremely high complexity, as I always mention, but it's worth it to repeat it. That high complexity enhances replayability, it enhances the learning curve of the game, and the direct consequence of that is that through enhancing the complexity, you enhance replayability, and through enhancing replayability, it's over there. Let's just teleport there because all of our quests are precisely there. And through enhancing complexity, you enhance replayability. But ensuring that mobs are balanced while retaining a five-pronged elemental system. I don't know what's the point of this quest, but I'm following the objectives and they're updating, so we're doing it. This is the quest. It involves just escorting through the region. It's pretty good level design quest because it allows the player to, as you can see, explore the place while doing the quest at the same time. Pretty good level design variety. Pretty good design. That correlation adds a lot of complexity and that adds a lot of replay. Well, let's get into the specific things because, as I've said, into the specific aspects of mobs, of the stat system of mobs and their mechanics. There's a myriad of possibilities. We'll begin with the stats and then we'll get into the gameplay variation, like area of effect attacks and those things. Beginning with the stats, we have 5 elements in both attack and defense, so we see a benefit of having that universe of a defensive gameplay system created not only for the player but also for the mobs. Because, for example, in Borderlands, in order to know the elemental damage, as a direct comparison, in order to know the elemental damage that you have to deal to the mob, you basically need to consult the wikia of Borderlands, because there's no visual reference, like there is in Sacred 2, of there's only for poison, I believe. There's only for poison, and you have to experiment. In poison, yes, because the health bar in Borderlands is kind of like yellowish when it's corrosive damage. But if we take into account shock damage, or, well, in the case of Borderlands 2, I think they dammed down the system a bit because they went for slack damage, so there's only 3 compared to the original 4 of electricity, fire, and corrosive, and And was there a fourth one? I think there was a fourth one.
Elitist rabble.
I think there was a fourth one. I may be forgetting one. The point is that in Borderlands, you generally have to consult the Wikia
Justifies all means.
for a lot of cases. For example, I remember when trying to go against, when I went against Chromorax the Unbeatable, the Invincible, sorry, the secret final boss of the game. When I went against him, went up against him, sorry, I had to consult the elemental resistances of the mobs. So there we have a pretty crazy phenomenon, which is that Borderlands 2 does implement a defensive system on the mobs, but not on the player. But not on the player. You don't have elemental resistances. Pretty much there's no gear besides the weapons in Borderlands. The only it is pretty dumbed down. There's no defensive system. You only care about your shield, and that's pretty much it. Getting the best shield. But you don't have specific elemental resistances for your defenses. Ironically, and it's a pretty unique case in Borderlands. As I said, there's a defensive system in place for mobs. So in the case of Borderlands, it is two-dimensional. The defense system of mobs is two-dimensional, but it's one-dimensional on the player. The elemental resistances system, the defenses. You only care about your shield as a player, but mobs do have different elemental resistances. Quite interesting phenomenon. In the case of Sacred 2, as we know, hey, Ignite1000! Hello, how are you doing? Thank you for being the 9th member over at Discord, for following the streams, and for joining and discovering my reviews in general. Perfect, man, and how have you been? Thank you for truly appreciating my reviews, and I remember when you followed the stream, I was lost in the middle of a swamp. I was lost in the middle of a swamp. No problem. Thank you. Always I always say that it's important to be thankful to all of you for visiting me on stream. I highly appreciate it. Besides, I know that sometimes my time zone it's not compatible with. Oh, I mean, I got killed. It's not compatible with a lot of you, and as a result, I know that a lot of you, um, join the stream later, and precisely just to watch the analysis. No, it's incredible. I remember when you followed the stream, I was in the middle of a swamp, lost with the lizardmen, and doing my crazy analysis. You are welcome, and thanks. Thank you, man. And I remember I was lost. I was lost in the middle of a swamp when you followed, and I displayed your follow message, but yeah, I was pretty much lost doing my crazy analysis. I don't know if you've seen them with the metaphysics and everything, and I also did a lot of game recommendations and pretty much all of the aspects of the game. Amazing game. I know if you played it. I know how you discovered this game, because generally when people discover the stream, it's because of the game that I'm playing at first glance. And I don't know what's your story with Sacred 2, but mostly, for example, the other day over at Discord, precisely Crowbar told us on the general channel that he had played the game, and he was rediscovering it. And in another case, for example, Scarlet Dragoon was a beta tester of the game, and yeah, I don't know how you discovered Sacred 2. If you might tell me, how did you discover Sacred 2? Because it's a pretty underrated and obscure game. It's a pretty underrated and obscure game. Uh, Perhaps you played it back during the 7th generation. I remember that Pekarin, I think he mentioned he had the copy on PS3, and yeah. I love to know how you guys discovered the games. I played it when it was released on consoles back in the day, on the original date. Could you answer my question if it crashed? If it crashed? on PS3 or Xbox 360, it doesn't matter. Did it crash ever, or did it break your console? Because it's a huge doubt that I have. That if the console version has the problems of this, because if it has a memory leak, I don't know. I suppose it could potentially break the console in comparison. Uh, so yeah. Hmm. By the way, um, I saw that you have some mods over at Nexus Mods. I don't remember it crashing too much. When you followed the stream, I saw that you had some mods over at Nexus Mods. The Borderlands mod for starting a fresh copy of Borderlands 2 with the full inventory unlocked, I think it's quite amazing. So I wanted to congratulate you on it, because when I played Borderlands 2, it was a critical game design choice that I didn't analyze the game on stream, and so it didn't crash too much. Deep thanks for that piece of information, because it's a huge dab, and I think it's a critical mod that completely changes the experience, because you have to gradually expand the deck storage. I remember, so I wanted to congratulate you on it, because it's a huge yes, but I rarely post some new mods currently. Well, but that one, it was a huge design flow that it's inherited from Hellgate London. I know if you played Hellgate London, and I wanted to congratulate you on that one, because it's a level design flow that I didn't see back then, and you clearly saw it. Because then I thought about it, I saw it and I said, yeah, it's true, the deck storage in Borderlands, well, I did upload Chromorax the Invincible, thanks. I did beat Chromorax the Invincible on Borderlands, back when I played Borderlands 1. I didn't stream it, but I did stream the ending. I think Chromorax the Unbeatable. I don't play Hellgate London, well, it's the predecessor of Borderlands. Borderlands got all of its ideas from Hellgate London. And precisely, the installation is a bit cumbersome. It has a lot of problems, as you could see when Pekaren was asking me. I don't know if you've seen it. And it's pretty much a predecessor. I highly recommend it if you played Borderlands. Highly recommend it. I think Crowbar played it. I think Sayona, over at Discord, he's the community manager of London 2038, and they did a great job, and I highly recommend it to you. The installation will be cumbersome, but I'll check it at some point. Well, that's my personal recommendation. It's the direct predecessor. The installation, if you get an original copy, if you are browsing other games over at a shop, or browsing games digitally, if for some reason you stumble upon a copy of Hellgate London, get it, because you will need the original 2008 copy. The one on Steam that precisely Pekaren consulted me about it's a different game. And in terms of Borderlands, there's another game that, which one was it? The name, it was made in Unreal Engine, that it was also quite similar with the damage numbers. War Mage, something like that. Well, then I'll remember it. And well, it's pretty much the predecessor. And I have so many games in my head that sometimes I forget about them. I don't know if you've seen the crazy recommendations that I did the other day. The crazy recommendations. I pretty much explore all of the modded consoles, and yeah, definitely I also love Borderlands as an example. But besides Destiny, no, there are some extra choices that you can pick. For example, Hellgate London directly is the predecessor, but well, besides Destiny is way too popular, so I'll not take it into account. It's a difficult genre, and it's quite difficult, but on the PSP there's a niche game. It's an exclusive called, for example, Bounty Hounds. Bounty Hounds, I remember having a similar system. I think it's in 3D, but it's a full-fledged 3D RPG. And it's quite obscure. It's quite obscure. But for example, Ghost in the Shell Shadow Complex, which is the successor of the original, released on the original PlayStation, is the sequel on PSP. And there was another one that had randomly generated dungeons, pretty much Borderlands. And yet, it's a quite an evasive genre, having a game with an elemental system like Borderlands. And I think it's over there, the last part of the objective. The last section of the objective. It's quite a unique genre, but there are some options. You just have to search for them a lot. You have the port of Borderlands 2 on the PS Vita, that it can be fixed if you mod the PS Vita, because otherwise it will run terribly. But yeah, the FPS RPG genre, it's difficult to come by, besides Destiny. But there are some. Then I'll look them up, and I can search for some. If you like games like Borderlands, I don't know if you like other genres. But I love recommending games to you all. And I don't know if you like other genres. If you have any other genre, we can do some game recommendations as well. In my case, as I said the other day, I learned the hard way that I cannot just stream RTS games, or I also love the racing genre, but they are kind of like monotonous for streams, so as a direct consequence, I know it would be boring or dull for most of you. So yeah, pretty much, if you like any other genre, we can discuss it, we can talk about game recommendations, no problem whatsoever. Okay, the objective is here, but there's nothing. It has to be undergrounded. Let's continue with the next one. One in a million. It's over there. Ah, it's the same. Sometimes this happens. That the objective is there. Going back to the analysis, people. As I was mentioning. Enemy variety. As I said on Tuesday, that 50% of the gameplay mechanics are generally ignored. In most modern isometric action RPGs, MMORPG games, and modern RPG games, due to the fact that most modern RPG games don't erect that barrier. In which the player is allowed to kill mobs faster than the amount of time required to create a min-maxed stat system in which you can just increase your base attack damage, and that will carry you through all of the abstract complexity of the gameplay mechanics, and you'll basically, as a down-to-earth example, well, I didn't ask you, like, what do you think about my crazy metaphysical reviews? I don't know if you've heard them so far, because I remember I was at the swamp, and that was long ago. I don't know if you've seen them, and what do you think about them. But as I was mentioning on Tuesday, precisely, it's incredible that 99% of modern RPG games don't think about creating a defensive system, of implementing a defensive system of the gameplay mechanics at all. Like in Diablo 3, you can pretty much beat the whole game without ever caring about distributing a single point on any stat other than your base damage and the percentage of your critical chance or whatever of your attacks. Pretty much. I think that's terrible, because you could see that in Secret 2 we had evasion, reflection, um, a lot of stats that are not even taken into account in modern RPG games. But it's baffling. It's absolutely astounding that you can beat 99%. Think about this perspective, guys. You can beat. I like your opinions so far very much. I learned a lot. Well, no, let me be a bit humble and say that I learned from you a lot as well. I don't know what you think about the unpopular exclusive opinions that we did on Tuesday about when I said that most people take for granted that people who discuss exclusives we are idiots fighting over pieces of plastic, for example. But I know that, for example, when I start talking about a metaphysical analysis, when I begin saying that a gaming mouse it's a specific combination of molecules and particles, and we call it like that instead, because of that, and not because of our mental perceptions. I know that it's extremely crazy, but keep this in mind. I have these crazy panels and these metaphysical, all of these complex descriptions because precisely I am not interested in people who don't have the patience to at least listen to the logic and the arguments, like I do, of how to get to the conclusions that you say. Is that count as does that count as philosophy? Yes, philosophy. If you want to, I generally don't talk about these things because they would be very boring. But if you're interested in philosophy, it's a long story. I have to tell you a long story, but it's philosophy. It's called realism. It's the opposite of relativism. And my specific school of thought, it's a European Italian school of thought called scholasticism. The greatest mind behind it is sorry for anyone coming here to watch this as a video game, as a YouTube bot, but this is a pretty interesting topic that we are talking here. It's medieval scholasticism. Previously to the Age of Enlightenment, roughly after the medieval age, pretty much scholasticism. The greatest minds were first Aristotle, and then when the Roman Empire made the jump from polytheism, from adoring or praying to Zeus and all of the Greek gods that they inherited from their conquests. After that, another philosopher called Thomas Aquinas, who was a Roman Catholic, not a monk, a priest, a medieval Roman Catholic priest, expanded on the original work of Aristotle. Now, you must be wondering, how on earth do you found this? Well, I went to a Roman Catholic university. I am atheist, but I went to a Roman Catholic university because Argentina. I bet you must have read it on my panels. I'm from Argentina, and Argentina is basically an Italian/Spanish diaspora. I know it's a kind of like a pretty weird combination, but think of it like Canada, but instead of French and British, it's like Spanish and Italian. And the direct consequence of that is that our school system, contrary to what happens in the US, for example, is totally European based. It's extremely similar to Spain and Italy. That's why I always mention that, for example, people when they think about South America, and I don't blame anyone for this. Please, people don't think that I get offended or anything. I never get offended for anything. Most people think, for example, over at the US or whatever, or if you don't know, and it's perfectly understandable that, for example, Argentina is the same as Mexico, and nothing to do. Central America, there was this is colonization of the Americas, but it's linked to this. Why do I talk about all of these topics? Because otherwise I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't even have studied realism. I would have gone for a standard modern philosophical formation like in the US, for example. So when the Americas were colonized, Argentina the colonizers, we are all Italian and Spanish. We are basically 100, almost 100%, 95% I think it was, European. This is something that is a pretty quite popular. It's a weird topic when it's treated because most people don't understand how a country that should be like the U.S. has such a deep European formation in a lot of its school system. Well, I went to a school system here in Argentina. It's the same as Italy and Spain, and I went to, and there's a lot of Roman Catholicism. Interesting. I didn't know much about schools there, but I tried not to do any assumption. No, don't worry. No. I mentioned this. Please never be shy or never be. I know that it's intimidating the all of the metaphysics and all of the things that I do and about, because they are things about race at the end of the day and society. No. Say whatever you like. I wouldn't be offended if someone entered the chat and called me, why aren't you American? Why are you white? These are the typical questions. Why are you white? Well, because in Central America there was a mix. Yeah, no, I wouldn't get offended at all. I know that it's natural. It's natural because Argentina is so down, so low that no one ever. It's a story that since we didn't have a lot of significant participation in history. For example, I mentioned it on Tuesday. Argentina never had slave trade, for example, and that's why there was no African migration at all, like in the U.S. We are all basically Italians and Spaniards. I have the citizenship. The other day, I realized that I had the right to vote because I got my citizenship. It's a long process. I was pretty fortunate. I got my citizenship, my Italian citizenship, 2 years ago. I knew I should vote in the local elections, but for example, I didn't know that I had to vote in the global European elections, and I didn't vote because in case you are interested, the paper comes. It arrived a week later. I should have gone to the embassy directly. And no, it's not. I wouldn't get offended. People, I know that sometimes I might look a bit, how do I put it, intellectually overwhelming. For reference, I live in Poland, but you're from Poland. I named the Polish philosopher on Tuesday, the great Zygmunt Bauman. He talked a lot about about the great concept of postmodernity, and of postmodernity. Then you must understand the European formation. I don't know if they give you realism, but it's a quite well, Poland. I mentioned this. Poland, Ireland, all countries that retained the Roman Catholic influence of the Roman Empire. Also Spain, Portugal, and Italy, and by extension Argentina. Maybe that's why. Maybe you find my opinions. Maybe that's why you don't hate my opinions, at least. Maybe that's why. Now I see it. Maybe that's the reason. I named Zygmunt Bauman, a compatriot of yours, and I think he's brilliant because precisely metaphysical realism, as I was mentioning, when after the fall of the Roman Empire. I don't talk about these topics generally, people, just as a reference, as a YouTube poll, because I think it would be boring for most of us, but they are amazing topics that if I have the opportunity to discuss them, I love them. Thomas Aquinas, precisely, did a reinterpretation of Aristotle, of metaphysical realism, of scholasticism. He created scholasticism. He evolved the original philosophy of Aristotle. As I said, since I am an atheist, but I mention this constantly, I don't like it when over at the media, over at publicly, people treat countries with a Roman Catholic inherited culture as idiots, because that happens a lot, sadly. I hate it, because while I'm an atheist, I do firmly believe that Roman Catholic culture, Protestant culture, and Anglican culture made a huge contribution to the moral values of society that I think are positive. For example, being thankful for having a job, or being thankful for having a family, or being thankful for, in my case, all of you guys at least listening to me for a second. I do believe that it had a positive impact on
You have
society. And
achieved one
Sigmund
goal.
Bauman, precisely, he uh, he has a pretty similar stance as mine. But I don't know about any philosophers here too much. Sorry. No, 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 no worries. But you're interested in the topic because you asked me as if it counts as philosophy. Sigmund Bauman, I would highly recommend it because he's an atheist, like I am, but he will acknowledge this. And when he talks about liquid modernity, especially, I was mentioning that the undermining of the objective meaning of words, that was one of Bauman's latest works, precisely. Um, Liquid postmodernity. I remember that when Jordan Peterson, a Canadian philosopher, mentioned similar concepts, he was praised as, "Oh, this guy is a genius," etc. No, it's Sigmund Bauman, precisely a compatriot of yours. Um, then he went to live over at the UK. He originally wrote the concept of liquid postmodernity. Basically, when I said liquid postmodernity, to see how interesting the work of, of Sigmund Bauman was, um, he says that precisely in a society in which there's a liquidity of concepts in which any word can mean anything, there there's a dissociation with reality. Everything is liquid. If I said publicly in any other place other than the stream, with people giving their opinions, um, they probably would tell me that you cannot define anything completely. You can never reach objective conclusions. And precisely Sigmund Bauman inherited the school of thought of Thomas Aquinas and the Anselm of Canterbury, who precisely made a long journey from Lombardy, from the 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 the, the, the original small it's not a province, it's an administrative division of Italy, which is precisely the same as my great grandfather, one of my great grandfathers, from Lombardy to the UK, pretty much. And delivered the order for quite some time when fighting against the Blood Dryads, when we for Chiron, and when the delivery is applied to it, etc. But just to have a reference for the question that you told me, um, basically metaphysical, it's called metaphysical realism. Scholasticism, if you Google scholasticism, there you'll have amazing minds explaining everything that I use to analyze video games, with a much more much more masterfully than I could possibly ever hope to do. But yeah, it's a medieval school that, as I said, um, it was previous to the concepts of Immanuel Kant, of all of the modern Prussian. I don't know if you know about Prussia. It was the previous denomination of Germany before the World War One and Two, and Prussia had a lot of relativist philosophers that pretty much during the period of time called the Age of Enlightenment, roughly between Middle Ages and modernity and the colonization of the Americas, they developed they developed relativism. Immanuel Kant, of course, well, Karl Marx. What could I tell you about him? Uh, I read about Marx here. I must say that Roman Catholic education was quite neutral in my case. I read both sides and I could logically make my choice. You can imagine that I'm not precisely a socialist because of all of this, um, but because of philosophical reasons that I explained. Air elementals is to tell Lumen trainer they are perfectly for defensive purpose. And basically, I resort I resort to metaphysical realism, that's the technical denomination, and scholasticism, that's the school of thought, which basically, I don't know if you've heard me, the dissociation between metaphysical entities and our mental perceptions. Basically, the Prussian school, as I've said, Prussia, roughly, there were differences, but people just as a as a quick reference, Prussia was the previous denomination of the German Empire before the 2 world wars that we've had. 1 in a million. Let's continue that one. Prussian philosophers were relativists, while in ancient Rome, as I said, yeah, I need to finish the other part of the story, people. Since Argentina it's the biggest Italian diaspora outside of Italy, we learn in Roman Catholic institutions, which are most of them, we learn about the Roman Empire, even more than that, even Argentine history at some point. We have Argentine history, but we learn a lot. That's why I know that it must be unusual from Europe to hear that that basically this is all European formation. It's because of that. Because contrary to the US, only Argentina, not Central America, only Argentina. That's why I say it's a pretty unique case. Only Argentina has kind of like kept intact the medieval school of thought. We also have the German ones and the Prussian ones and the more modern relativist ones. We have both of them, and people can choose. And precisely in my case, it was like that. As I said, I am an atheist. I don't believe God exists, but I think all of the culture of the Roman Empire and its influence on Europe and everything gave us a lot of positive values, and I think it's not a coincidence that a lot of these concepts were developed in precisely Central and Western Europe and the US and etc. Pretty much. So it's a scholasticism. There you'll find everything. Thomas Aquinas was the greatest. I disagree with some things because Thomas Aquinas, instead of being a pure realist, instead of saying constantly metaphysical reality, he will, in his work, he will, for example, address a dissociation between mental perception and metaphysical reality, but he will attribute that metaphysical reality is given by God. If you believe in God, for example, Thomas Aquinas definitely it's pretty much a perfect fit that will give you a lot of logical reasons while maintaining that relationship with Roman Catholicism. And Sigmund Bauman, for example, a bit more modernly, will give you a more pure realist opinion, maybe more pure, that is quite similar to mine in a lot of cases, because I think he manages to fully attain pure metaphysical realism. Don't be sorry at all. I know it's all crazy stuff because I think that in Europe, even, well, you'll tell me. I don't know if in Europe they should have, at least in Italy, there's still the metaphysical realism, and that they tell this difference. I don't know if they tell you this difference because, for example, in the US, it's all relativism, straight up. I think they don't even teach metaphysical realism. For example, it's not good or bad, people. Their choices. For example, that's why I mentioned religion a bit. When the US got independent from the UK, as I said, it was because of a massive migration of Protestants that didn't want to be precisely Catholic or Anglican in the case of the UK. And you can see how that influences the whole educational system of the country. But yes, basically, I don't know what you think. I don't know. You said that it's interesting, so at least that's positive for me. But at least you won't think that I'm crazy. But yeah, basically, I don't worry. I don't get offended at all or anything. But yes, essentially, Argentina has nothing to do with the cultural charge that Mexico got, or all of Central America, for example. That's why it's a pretty unique case, or Brazil or whatever. We're pretty much down here, isolated, close to Antarctica. We have penguins, I guess, not where I am, but we have penguins down in Antarctica. I don't know if you know it, but Antarctica is being disputed by 8 countries. Probably most of your countries as well. You just don't know it, that every country wants Antarctica. It's used for scientific purposes. It's a peaceful region, let's say, for now, fortunately. And And yeah, that's why there are memes going on if you read them online, that Argentines always say, for example, why they say that they're European if they're in the Americas? Why that's so fucking weird? And it's because of that, because Mexico pretty much mixed with the indigenous culture, but we didn't. Some history talk is always some history talk is always, yeah, I would love it. I am a passionate. If you would like, we
Do
can talk
not
about the Roman
confuse
Empire.
bravery
I love
with
talking about the Roman
madness.
Empire. The
Fear
judicial system
never
was quite
gives you
amazing. I talked a bit about it.
Ghost. Feel the
For
power of
example,
the
closing the chapter
Inquisition.
on colonization of the Americas, you love us history. That's pretty. See, there are such few of us
Just a scratch.
gamers or players of video games that can also appreciate philosophy and history, for example.
I needed that.
But deeply happy that my stream attracts the correct people. Like, um, for me, it's much more valuable discussing these topics that on most streams. If we're being honest, people, they would be way too boring for most of the average audience. I don't want to feel up to sound obnoxious or anything, but reality of the situation is that they would at least sound, even if they are not, relatively dull and boring. So I'm deeply thankful for being able to discuss this. No, closing the chapter. For example, we eat Italian food. You can. I can show you. Hang on a second. This will be interesting. Hang on a second. Here I can show you. For example, we eat Italian food. We speak Spanish, for example. But just so you have a reference, um, pretty much. Um, I can show you some food. For example, I can show you some food. For example, the Milan. We eat a lot of Milanese. I don't know if you know about that one. We eat a lot of pasta. We eat a lot of. See here. I think I can show you. Here, I think I can show you. So you have some examples so you can see it. Let me change to the home and browser desktop. There we go. And if you, for example, give me a sec. If you, for example, look at what I'm going to show you, here you can see a lot of something also interesting besides history. Um, Here you can see these are Argentine raviolis, for example. There you can see them. And if you think about it, it's the same pasta as in Italy, for example. So there you can see that is not just educational but also cultural. The impact. This is a plate of typical ravioli in Argentina, for example. For example, there you can see, and it's pretty much the same. Or I don't know, the Milanese typical. Here, for example, you can see it. Authentic Argentine Milanese are those things. And if you think about it, they are I think in German countries it's called Schnitzel. Could it be? Schnitzel instead of Milanese, but it's the same. The same. It's meat with the bread all over it. And well, there you can see that there are a lot of cultural inherited um, things. And even if you look at the where I live that I mentioned the other day, for example, uh, here I can show you so you see the crazy stuff. For example, here you can see, for example, a lot of things that well, these are not the capital. Why is it not like that? It's not. It doesn't take the English denomination. Let's try the Spanish one. There it is. For example, there. See, this is the center of of Argentina. And if you pay attention, the architecture is the same as in France, in Italy, in Spain, considering the part of the country. For example, here if we take a look, I think I show you YouTube bots. Looks like schnitzel. Yes, it is a schnitzel. Over at Italy, it's called Milanese. Well, for example, that you won't find it in Central America or in the US, but here this is we eat this every. I don't want to say every day. It's delicious. We do chicken schnitzel or I don't know, or I don't know, um, meat schnitzel. We have a lot of meat here. The only difference, it is a schnitzel in the German zone. In Austria, in Poland, it must be the same. If it inherited the Prussian German um, denomination of this. For example, this is where I am. It's Fairwind City. This is the beauty, the best part, I guess. But if you pay attention to the architecture, as you can see, this is the Congress. It's quite similar to for example, to a lot of European capitals. Um, from how the edges of the corners are designed and this, and as you can see, it's pretty much a portion of Italy took all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, if you think about it. So there's a lot of similarities. For example, these are the main zones. And as I said, people, I wouldn't blame any of you ever, any of you ever, um, any of you ever, if you tell me, I don't know, why are you are you so white? This is the typical question, or um why um that's some solid architecture. It's 100% a copy of European architecture. It's your architecture, either British or French. According to the neighborhood, it changes. It's like all of them smashed together. Then I won't spend a lot of time showing you tours, people, but you have them over at YouTube and you can see that's pretty much the same. And it's a cultural shock. That's why I say this. That that most people think that South America it's all the same. There should be a division between Central America and South America because essentially South America, the southernmost cone, Uruguay is a small country that was an Argentine province, pretty similar to Switzerland and Germany. Chile, the same case. The southernmost cone, and especially Argentina, where I am, is the most densely European populated, let's say, area. We are essentially that. And when we say that, there's either two options. One, the person laughs and says, this individual is crazy. This individual is crazy. Or second, the person understands it, and it's a huge cultural shock. Because in Central America, as I said, um, there was a mix of races with the indigenous population. Here, there wasn't in Argentina, the same as in the US. Um, and that, as you can see, that's reasonable. Yeah. It's absolutely different, and I hate it. I don't know if you agree with me, but I hate it when the Washington Post, the New York Times, they say, why don't you have in football? It's always with football. I don't like football. I must be the only Argentine who doesn't like football, or one of the very few. But soccer, in the case of the US, if in case we have any US viewer, in case it's as part of the YouTube pod, they say, why don't you have Afro-American? They think that somehow reached this zone. Why don't you have Afro-American players? And the answer, the only possible answer one can give them, is because we are fucking Italians and Spaniards. And that doesn't get through the thick minds of the people over at media generally, for example. And the instant next thing that they say, you are all Nazis. Like what the fuck? We are fucking Spaniards and Italians. We are not Nazis. I am basically an Anglophile. I love the UK, and I respect the legacy of Europe on it. But that doesn't make me a Nazi. And that's something that I see a lot, and it's actually terrible. So yeah, I guess the only way to offend me is to call me a fucking Nazi or something like that. Oh yeah, it works like that. Especially when there's a lot of well, if you want to go to Reddit, go to Reddit, Google Argentina football team, World Championship or whatever the fuck it's called, the World Cup, and you'll see The Washington Post. Why are you guys? They're kinda white, huh? They're kinda. Why? Why? These guys are Nazis, huh? Why don't you have it? Because there was no African slave trade. Because we are Italians and Spaniards. And fucking genetics were like they were. I cannot go through. I can go to the genetic answer. The amount of melanin is lower. What are you gonna do? And no, we didn't. We are normal Italians and Spaniards living our lives. Like, yeah, there are a lot of Roman Catholic churches, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's how history unfolded itself, and that's why I don't get offended, because I know the whole mental process by now. We know that, at least I know it. I don't know if any other South Americans know it, but for example, the direct comparison is with Mexico, because we share the Spanish language. It's true that we are Italians, but we speak Spanish. And we share the Spanish language, a pretty different variation. Ours is much more neutral and European-like more. The tone is more. It's lower than the Italian than the Mexicans, for example. And basically, there was no mix of races, and pretty much, due to that, the direct consequence of that is that yes, we share the language, but we don't share the culture. Pretty much. Are descendants of native tribes live there too? No, not in Argentina. Yes, in Central America. That's the difference. Not in Argentina. Yes, in Central America. In Central America, yes. Not a lot, eh? Don't think that there's a... Please, people, don't think that just because I'm saying this, I'm saying that in Mexico it's full of still of Aztecs. No. No. It's completely civilized, except for some weird cases that are civilized, that they're not native tribes. They're not native tribes, but there are, how do I put it, the classic... I don't want to use the term, but I'll have to use it. Please, no one get offended. It's not offensive. The banana republics, let's say. The one when you see a dictator. The typical Caribbean dictator. More or less, I don't know if you've seen them. Venezuela, Cuba. That's because of the influence of the Eastern Bloc of China, Russia, and Middle East powers on their region is in Central America. Yes, there are not native tribes. In Brazil, there are, what you are asking for. But a few. It's colonized, it's civilized. Either with American values, let's say Mexico inherited from the colonization of the US and straying a bit far away from European values, or in the Southern Cone with more European values. Like the highest concentration is where I am right now here in Buenos Aires, in the capital of Argentina. It's pretty much full European, almost. I don't know how to put it. It's not full European, because we also inherited some traits from the US, it's true, of local customs, that's natural. But for example, I showed you the schnitzel, I can also show you the pizza. And the Roman Catholic formation, but no. Here we have the first vote of the day, people. We have the first vote of the day, answering the question of yesterday by Pekarin. That he didn't make the question. That why do I block links? Here you have the perfect answer. Here you have the perfect answer. Let's see if I can ban the bot. See why I have links blocked. See why we can have nice things. And no. If you have more questions, ask away. Ask away. There are almost no descendants. There was a mix of blood in Central America, and here in South America, to a lower percentage. There are still some isolated communities. But nothing significant. In the zone between Argentina and Chile, I don't know if you look at the map, we have a pretty long frontier. Chile is almost at over the Pacific Ocean, and we are over at the Atlantic. There are some, but it's isolated. They are absolutely isolated, and the degree of percentage is much lower when compared to Central America. Precisely in Central America, you can stumble upon the things that you are mentioning. In Brazil, in the Amazon jungle, for example, there you will find those, but there I don't know why you would like to go over there, other than for investigation purposes for National Geographic or something like that. But there you might find what you're looking for. Might, but yeah. It's pretty much all. If you just focus on the southernmost section of Argentina, it's all pretty much a part of Italy, right away stripped from Europe and placed here. Spanish and Italy, pretty much. We speak Spanish, but half of us are Italians and half of us are Spanish, and it's mixed as well. For example, I have Spanish and Italian blood. Is population there equally distributed, or population is measured in cities only? Great question. Argentina is one of where I live, the capital of Argentina. There's a huge unbalance, as you say, as you ask. For example, where I live, the capital of Argentina, there's a huge difference in terms of a standard of living. It's a huge difference with Europe. There's more the Human Development Index and equality in the capital of Argentina. It's a huge difference when compared to the provinces of Argentina that you see. I think Argentina is one of the biggest countries, but it has that disparity. There's a lot of disparity. The Human Development Index and education and everything, it's European. It's at European level here at the capital, and in the provinces, no. It's pretty similar to the phenomenon in the U.S. For example, in the U.S., in the zone of New England, in the zone of Boston, there's a development index pretty similar to the UK. It's the exact same copy as the UK. Not the exact people. There are some cultural differences, but the highest degree of similarities, let's say. Over at New England, close to the zone of Washington DC, it's a bit to the south, Washington DC, but the zone of New England, even the architecture is like British, and the Human Development Index is high there. And for example, in some other zones, it's not as high, even though the average development index, Human Development Index of the US is on average high, not as high as a lot of countries in Europe, and for example, those very same zones inside of the US. But on average, I would say that there's a disparity both on population, a huge disparity, and also in terms of Human Development Index. Going back to the initial question, in Argentina, at least I cannot speak for Central America, but I presume it's the same phenomenon. We're kind of like isolated down here a bit. Yes, there's a huge. Argentina is underpopulated, absolutely underpopulated. We are 40 million. And 10 million must be around the capital. 10 million must be only around at the point of the capital and around it. So if you compare the extension, Spain has 40 million, the same amount of population. We synchronously developed. As a reference, not just culturally. Italy has a bit more, it has 60 million. But the extension of Argentina, Spain would fit inside of Argentina a dozen times. Hopefully that disparity is not a big problem. No, because of the inherited Roman Catholic culture, precisely. See why I said that it was a huge factor in the development of a European-minded society in America. Because, for example, in Europe it happens. I don't know if it happens, Ike, you will tell me. In Argentina, since we inherited that, and in Europe, I have the idea that it happens. there isn't such a disparity between the high class and the lower class. Like in the US, there's more geographical separation, but in Europe, there isn't that geographical separation. Um, it's more mixed. It's true that obviously people, this happens in every society since ancient Greece. There's a dissociation between higher income classes and lower income classes. Of course, from a perspective of the very distribution inside of a city, you cannot have, for example, the Congress surrounded, for example, by slums and having your seat of power. This is basic geopolitics. You cannot have the Congress surrounded by danger, for example, or the seat of power, because that endangers the whole territory. Of course, that doesn't happen because of common sense, but there isn't such a disparity in the city. The rest of the country, since just like in the US, the provinces are autonomous, there's nothing the capital European like city can do about the provinces. And the provinces, maybe they do have that American, a more American, not North American, not in the sense of the US, South American. It's not the same tribes as in Mexico. That mix with the indigenous population. You won't find indigenous population, but you'll find mixed, a mix with the indigenous population. Here, no, because a seat of power had to be established back during the original colonization period. Pretty much. The disparity is not a big. It's not that much of a problem. In Argentina, everyone that mentions it, we have a lot of problems. We're terrible at economics. Our economy is shit. That's common between Italy, Spain, and Argentina. Our economies, most of the time, are terrible. But now it's improving. Now it's improving. Fortunately, it's improving. But besides having a lot of issues, that is not one of them. The Argentina is quite. It accepts people from all over the world. In that sense, it's one of the most welcoming territories, even more than the US, if I had to say. Much more, because we don't have the inherited issues of having had slave trade during the colonization period. So it feels natural. No one will raise any eyebrow. Then of course they will probably care more about your football preferences than anything else. If you say, if you have, if you say let's go France in the middle of a World Cup, well, that will be more dangerous. That will be more dangerous if Argentina is playing, for example, in the last World Cup. If you said that, well, there, when it's about football, it's a different story. It's a different story, and I hate football. So so there you have a perfect reference. Like, if it's about football, yes. If it's about football, yes. It's not a big problem at all, I would say it. But yeah, going back to the other question, the population is concentrated heavily, and it's underpopulated. There are zones that are not even populated at all. So yeah, pretty much it's underpopulated. It's highly underpopulated, and well, the Schnitzel and the Milanese conundrum is quite interesting all of the time. Other things that I can tell you, for example, well, if you like, we can go back to the philosophy and the Roman Empire. For example, in the Roman Empire, the judicial system of a Roman Empire. Yeah, that's right. I didn't tell you. Why is it that as a lawyer, I also know about philosophy? Because in Argentina, they are mixed, and anyone who is a lawyer has to understand philosophy. In Roman Catholic institutions, he has to learn about philosophy. That's why I am a philosopher, pretty much, because it's kind of like adjacent to the title. It's kind of like a collateral effect of the title, pretty much. And in Roman Catholic institutions, if you go to public institutions, you'll have the relativist, typical view that you would get in the US, for example. And pretty much, um, I learned philosophy in my law school degree while becoming a lawyer. After that, I wanted more money, so I decided to be a software developer. And I also knew English. My first study was at the Cambridge dependency here in Fairwinds. I teach English, pretty much. I develop software and teach English. Uh, I don't work as a lawyer at all. That's interesting because where I live, everything is evenly distributed, community-wise, compared to what I see in most of the world. Exactly. Be extremely thankful that Europe, what I was mentioning, it has the highest perfectly developed, perfectly. It can never be perfectly built, but the best distribution of the Human Development Index. That's the thing. But if you go to the US, take a look at the US, and it will be the same. There's a higher disparity. There's disparity because I mean, I don't want to justify people. It shouldn't happen. I am not justifying it. But since the extension of the territory, it's bigger. For example, make this comparison: the Human Development Index that you would get in Poland, Ike, and the one that you would get in, I don't know, in Turkey or any country of that sadly um, didn't have the same distribution of the Human Development Index. And that comparison, in terms of territory, of the extension of the territory, would be fair. Yes, at least that's hopeful. Indeed, if we make the comparison in terms of the extension of the territory, it's pretty similar because there won't be that much difference between me and my classmates over at that went to the same zone to the same type of Roman Catholic institution. But if we make a comparison, the distance between the capital and the faraway provinces of Argentina, it's roughly the same as Western Europe and Eastern Europe, or Northern Europe and Southern Europe. And you will see that without a doubt there will be more variation in the Human Development Index. For example, it would be a fair comparison. The same happens in the US. And basically there's a huge difference between I don't know, Massachusetts and other states. It's a pretty natural phenomenon, exclusively due to the extension of the territory. Of course, hopefully that is fixed, and we both hope that it's changed. We wouldn't have economic problems here in Argentina if that gap wouldn't exist, probably, because people would have understood that that printing bills creates inflation, even if at the beginning I have the best intentions in the world. But if I overspend the total amount of money that my taxpayers can give me, there's only one result, which is inflation. And that took 20 years for people to understand here, and we are paying the consequences. But for example, reaching this conclusion would have happened without such high indexes of poverty in the interior provinces of Argentina, for example. And you can see, people, that is a pretty complex topic that I love definitely debating because of that. And it's true what you say. Europe has the lowest disparity in Human Development Index. It's true. So always be thankful for that. Always be thankful. That's my 2 cents. My 2 cents. Those are my 2 cents. My opinion. Always be thankful, and always be vigilant if your administration overspends to a point that it generates a lot of inflation. My 2 cents, because that's the history of what happened here. At the end of the day, then, Uh, it's amazing that we can have a lot of social policies that help people in need. But if you overspend continuously for 50 years, like what happened here, inflation will happen. It will happen regardless of what you do. And at the end of the day, you are not making them a favor. Because then they are losing more than what they would have had originally. Isn't trade difficult there? In Argentina, since it's far away? Yeah, for example, yeah. It depends on the product. You can import them, and due to inflationary policies, you'll have a lot of taxes. Yes, we are working on fixing that, I guess. Trade is not difficult. If you pay, I have a lot of goods that would be considered luxury goods. For example, gaming consoles, my gaming PC, and everything. Uh, you just pay. You pay more due to the tax. Due to the tax, you have extra taxes. But if our economy was normal, if we didn't have, just as a reference, just so you know, and you'll see the craziness. We have last year we had 30% inflation per month after all of the 20 years of socialist policies. You can see why. You can see that at least if you like socialism for whatever reason, that I have logical reasons, and everyone in Argentina here has logical reasons now to be at least skeptical of social policies. Because of that, because during 20 years, they printed bills of our local currency, and that created 30% monthly inflation. Monthly, not yearly, monthly. Basically, when that happens, um, the money you have in your pocket, with the money you have in your pocket, you can buy much less over at the supermarket because prices over at the supermarket are, that sounds, it's a lot, and practical consequences isn't far from any other big economies. No, it's a lot, and basically the products over at the supermarket are still in dollars, so your
The
money loses
Inquisition will
power,
be
loses intrinsic value
victorious.
against them, and you can buy less food at the supermarket. Of course, upper classes uh, are not affected. We are not affected as much as lower classes, but it impacts all of us. Like upper class here would be middle slash upper in Europe, for example. It's still better than, I don't know, 1,000 euros. It's still more than that, and it's slowly getting better. But the main problem, as you can see, is economic, but it does not reach to be millionaire like the concept you have in Europe. Like, no one has a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or crazy expensive things. Millionaires don't even have them. For example, only if they are kind of like top 1% of society. Like, that's pretty much a social distribution. Going back to your other question, the trade. No, we have a lot of import. What happened to this stream? What happened to this stream? It stopped working. What's going on? The We have a lot of imports, definitely. We can import, and yeah, we have my gaming PC and everything. It's just that, as I've said, the
The
impact of
season
that social
seems to be perfect for my
what's going on? My
plans.
stream is perfect. There we go. It wasn't me, people. It was Twitch. Sometimes that happens, and pretty much. Let me reconnect. See, there we go. Yeah, there we go. And pretty much, it's far from other big. No, we import a lot
Another
from the
offering.
US and Brazil, and from Europe as well. For example, I have a set of Star Wars chess pieces that is from Spain. You just pay more taxes. You pay more taxes. It's the economy, after all. If your economy allows you to do so, uh, you can import. You'll pay more taxes, but you will be able to get your. We have a pretty good import. There are some niche things that, for example, not because of geographical reasons, but due to cultural reasons. For example, I was looking for a hand grip for the PS Vita, and since, for example, gaming isn't as popular, it is, but not as popular as in the US, there isn't demand, so I have to perhaps search a bit more for specific products. Maybe I have to search a bit more,
Never
but
had
yes,
any
the
doubts.
big the worst thing that I can tell you as a negative is that there's no official distribution in a lot of cases. For example, we don't have official Nintendo distribution, official PlayStation distribution. That's why PCs are so popular as well. We don't have official Nvidia distribution of GPUs. You will buy them at the equivalent of Amazon, and which is a local company that is basically from Argentina and takes care of logistics all over South America. It's our most important company right now. I think it's the highest value one, the highest valued one, and basically, except for specific products, I can say here VAT is the import tax probably 23%, and that dictates most of things. Yeah, you mean the import tax? It's the import tax, I presume. Well, here it's 50%. They are working on removing it. They are working on removing it. It's one of the great legacy things that socialism left us. I don't know. Neutral. It's objective. It happened. 50% tax for importing things, for importing stuff. 50%, and in a lot of cases, but in a lot of cases you can find the things locally and you don't pay that. Uh, Pretty much it depends on the product. For example, if you ask me about construction, etc., more common things that you want to import, you won't have that much of a problem. Electronics is a problem. And in my case, as you can see, since I love video games, it does directly affect me. But it's for, let's see, they're luxury items in any society after the end of the day. Less in Europe because of that amazing distribution of the Human Development Index and the purchase power of the average of society.
Everything
My two
goes
cents.
as planned.
If you see that your administration over at Poland is,
Power
or
emanates
any
from this
administration
item.
is spending much more than what the taxpayers are giving, that you guys are giving them, be careful. Regardless of the ideology, regardless of whatever, it's a lesson that here people had to learn by the hard way. In my case, I already knew that would happen due to education and whatever,
Power emanates from this
but
item.
it's a lesson that we learned the hard way. The first piece of advice I would give anyone, regardless of the country, always see if your administration is overspending more than what your taxpayers can give them. Main tax, no, not import. It's on every buy. At least I think that is how we're. Oh, you mean you share the import tax with the main? Yeah, we have that one. 20%, 21% is in our case. The general tax, the general tax for any good, regardless of import or not. You mean that one? It's kind of like the general tax of 20%. We also have that one, and on top of that one, 50% if it's an imported good. So 23 plus 50%, pretty much.
Power
The one that you are
emanates from
mentioning,
this
the
item.
general one in pretty much any country ever, the 20% tax plus 50% on top of it if it's imported. If it's not imported, 20% as you
Power
said.
emanates from this item.
I think you made yeah, not the main tax. The main tax, no, not import. The main tax, no, not import. Ah, perfect, perfect. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, we have that one. It would be that one, 21 plus the typical tax that every country has, roughly 20% plus 50% if it's imported. If it's not imported, just 20, the same. So that's why I said it depends on the category of item. if it's available locally or not, regardless of manufacturing. If it was available locally or not. But yeah, mostly electronics are imported goods, so they will have it in the price. So yeah. Pretty much that's the terrible part of Argentina, the economy. The economy, as I said. Sorry, people, if you like socialism, it's pretty much responsible for a mess here. Personal life experience. If you see that your administration is overspending a lot, there's only one result, and that will generate inflation. People here had to learn it the hard way with a lot of poverty rates. After saying let's go more social assistance, more, it got to a point where corruption spread so much because of that is a bad part. Culturally, Argentina is beautiful. I think we don't have the import tax. It sounds rough. Yeah, precisely. That's what you mentioned of. But it's not because of geographical reasons, Aika. It's because of what I said. Because of um, the economy, precisely how the economy was handled in the previous 50 years. So yeah. The problem is basically inflation. But well, as a positive aspect, I can say that the current administration, fortunately, after 20 years, is a second non-full-on socialist administration, and is doing an amazing job. There's a huge reason why more than half of the population we voted for him, because I know he's I don't think we've seen him. The current president of Argentina is absolute. The Most of people think he's crazy. He's a doctor in economics. He got a lot of prizes over at the Austrian School of Economics and etc. And the crazy stuff he mentions. It's the first time that we had to pick a doctor in economics to fix the mess, and he's doing a great job. He's doing a great job. Inflation has already dropped from 17,000 majorist from yearly from one year to another one to 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 500 or something like that. It dropped from 30 monthly, 1% of inflation per day. He has already dropped it to 3% per month. It's That's why if you see him receiving prizes, he deserves them. Definitely, he had a lot of instability the first time because our opposition doesn't work like in. It's not a dictatorship. It's not as bad as a dictatorship like in Central America at all, because of that European culture. That's why I value it so much. But it's true that economically, for example, the opposition is you cannot negotiate with full-on communists implanted by Russia, China, basically Putin, and Middle East powers. Like, there's no point of negotiation possible. They denied him all of the bills at all. It took him 6 months just to have a bill over at the Congress. Here we have the Congress. That's the American inherited values. We have Congress instead of Parliament. So, but it was pretty much the same. We don't have prime minister, we have president, and it took him 6 months to get enough votes to get the bill that he required to at least revive the dead that was the economy. Besides, there's a long story. I don't know if you're interested. If you like socialism, people, you will hate me, but the matter of the situation is that here they overspent on purpose to increase inflation so that they would leave basically an economic bomb to any government, any, let's say, conservative government, normal government, so that the economic bomb would explode, everything would go to shit, inflation would he wouldn't be able to manage the economic crisis, and as a direct consequence of that, they would come back. That's the system. At least, personal experience, that has been my personal experience in almost 30 years of life with socialism. I know that in Europe it's much more tenuous, that it's reasonable. I want to believe it's reasonable yet, that they are not overspending and generating a lot of inflation. But my 2 cents, my recommendation is be careful because um, it gets out of hand. It's called the invisible tax, and they had to learn it the hard way here. Inflation is pretty much called the invisible tax among economists for a reason. You don't pay for it now. You don't pay for it now. It will. You'll see. Let's go. Good, 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 good. We are spending. We are spending. And then, when you constantly overspend more than what your taxpayers can give you, there's only one result. You will have inflation will be generated, and the direct consequence of that will be that the value of your currency will be uh, totally destroyed. Like, helping people is amazing. We all support it. I don't think anyone would be against that. I am not against that, definitely. Helping those in need, if there's a contingency situation, like making the Human Development Index better and more equally distributed and everything. But if it gets to a point where you overspend on purpose to generate inflation and ensure that it's an economic bomb that will explode to the next government, so the next government always has to make the adjustments to the economy that are required, and so the government becomes unpopular because when you have to adjust to the real value in comparison to the dollar, which is the dominant currency that the euro and everything competes with, because the US is the dominant superpower of the world. When they have to do that adjustment, when you purposely do that, so the economic bomb explodes to your successor, it's not. You can imagine that we have. I bet you can see by now that we have logical reasons to be not only as Italians socially a bit more socially conservative, but also fiscally. After this, there's a lot of people with a lot of traumas, with a lot of psychological uh, damage, because it's psychological damage at the end of the day. When you overspend on purpose to generate inflation, so the economic bomb would explode uh, on the next term of the next administration, you can see why. Fortunately for me and for everyone, it's not popular right now here. Uh, a socialist slash, I don't know. Uh, I don't want to say full communist because there are people who are having a much worse situation than us here in Argentina, for example, in Venezuela and Central America. And we don't have full-on communists. We never had full-on, except in 1940 something, and it wasn't full communism. We've always had this semi-socialist leaning tendency, but never full-on communism like the Soviet Union or or China. I don't know. But yeah, it caused a lot of damage. And in my personal experience, it has been terrible. I know that in Europe it's much more reasonable. That is reasonable. That social democracy is reasonable, and it's not the same. But please understand that I can't get over the idea that if you overspend, you will generate inflation. This is not a matter of left and right. It's objective. You can do it, but then you will have to adjust the economy. And if you don't do it, eventually it's a trauma that we will never get away from. That is difficult to surpass. Uh, Inflation will create poverty, people. It will. Another ghost story. Let me think about what I can do.
Has been accomplished.
Lead me to the prince's ghost. In order to help the prince, I must have a vision. Yet I can only have this vision when I am close to him. Communism sounds pretty bad in technological era, like current one. I think it's an absolute failure. But for example, in Venezuela, I don't know if you've seen it. recently they're trying to fight to not become Cuba. Um, I think that objectively, due to economical reasons alone, I don't know what you might think, but if you like communism, I have nothing against it. But or socialism or social democracy, I have nothing against it, and feel free to express your opinion. I have nothing against it uh, at all. Um, as you said, I concur. It's a pretty terrible idea. Uh, I think the cell phone, well, the mobile. This is how old school. That's my British old school. Those are my old school British teachings. Uh, the mobile, it gives the population a degree of freedom of expression that we didn't have previously, and that's playing a
You
part
just
in
worry about
in
the
in
currency.
finally finishing with the
I
in
will be
Central
back
America, for example,
soon.
there is communism in finishing those. Right now in Cuba and Venezuela, for example, it's a mess. That's full of communism, but it's because of external influences. And as I said, it may sound. I will acknowledge that it sounds good on paper from a theoric standpoint. On paper, it's a paradise. Everyone is equal. Blah 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 blah. We know cultural Marxism. We fight against those who have the most. For me, I'm not millionaire, but I don't know. I would be hated. I don't know. Uh, I probably would be hated uh, because I'm not lower class, I suppose, and I'm not that bad. You can see that I don't bite, and at all, and in fact, I would deeply love to see, for example, Argentina with everyone with a high standard of living and everyone around the world. Who doesn't want that? I mean, it goes against the very human nature or a depraved mind, but then I think it never addresses the practical aspect of socio-political theories, if you know what I mean, people. It never addresses how to objectively, economically reach the purpose of the idyllic idea that it proposes. Liberalism and technology would be probably my personal political preferences. Well, see, there's a difference, and I have no problem. I lean more socially conservative, typically Italian. I do agree that sorry, liberalism and a technocracy. So, uh, pretty much a much more, a much bigger influence of the efficiency of the means of production through technology. Yeah, I would say that is highly important. I mean, I develop software. I have to, I have to be at some point. But yeah. Generally, on average, the huge difference is that instead of uh, liberal, I would lean more socially conservative. Yeah, that pretty much. Well, I don't know if you did mods and maybe you develop software, or for example, Scarlet Dragoon here, another viewer of the channel. He beta test. He's a beta tester, and he also knows about those things. So yeah, I can see why we all in this technological sector we need to have a bit of, to a certain extent, a lean towards technocracy. Yes, of course, I know that Italian social conservatism. We agree on liberalism in terms of economics because the even if we are more social conservative, if we Italians maybe are a bit more socially conservative instead of liberal, fiscally, liberalism is fiscally the fact that what I said, fiscally, liberalism is conservative. Is conservative uh, because, as I said, it's a basic principle of not spending more that's shared between liberalism and economic conservatism. Uh, Not spending more than what your taxpayers can give you. In that sense, that would be fiscally liberal. Socially, the difference is that I am socially a bit more socially conservative. I do believe that the that the inherited legacy of the Roman Empire, and in our case from Europe precisely, I think it's worth keeping a lot of the social traditions. Of course, as you can imagine, please don't hate me for it. Just as I don't hate anyone else, I don't like concepts like I don't believe in God, but I don't like abortion, for example. I think it creates a lot of psychological problems and etc. And those things, for example. And I wouldn't say that because of that. Most people in Argentina, for example, don't like abortion because of that. They are more like you. They are more socially liberal than me, but they are against abortion. For example, most Argentines and most Italians in general. Maybe not that much in Spain. In Spain recently, even if it's our father, our we are directly linked. We were an ex-Spanish colony, and but for example, if I say this publicly in the U.S., people would say that, for example, you are trying to take away women's rights or whatever. No, I'm actually trying to protect them. Be, besides any conclusion that what you might say, uh, uh, my intention is to protect them and to. Um, I have a lot of logical arguments. I don't know if people would like to listen to me talk about it. I saw the case Roe versus Wade, the original one, as part of my law career. If it's unbearable, I please tell me if it's unbearable, if my ideology is unbearable, because I know that it's quite unpopular nowadays. Um, I know what I say, quite unpopular. But think about it this way, people. You have millions of streams that will tell you exactly the opposite of mine, that will have a totally different perspective. There has to be at least one that has an Italian social conservative approach, let's say. Uh, and I saw Roe versus Wade, and several years after it was verified that the declaration of Roe, basically it was a pregnancy in which they had to practice the abortion. The first one that wasn't due to medical reasons, due to a risk in the life of the mother, for example. I'm saying all of this, and then in Argentina, abortion is legalized, and same-sex marriage and all of those things, they are legalized. I personally disagree, and I think it will eventually go back to the initial state, uh, because in the next election on 2025, I think there will be a shift and we will go back to the Italian values. For there will be a reflection on that, on the bills and the laws, and pretty much in Roe versus Wade, several years after Roe, in her deathbed, several years after the Supreme Court case over at the U.S. that practically started it all, she confessed over at her deathbed that the that she lied about the case of being sexually assaulted. She confessed that she lied, for example. Of course, I totally agree if it's the case of medical reasons, and well, I have some doubts that if it would be it's a pretty deep topic. In case of an assault like that one, I would lean to say that in that case it might also could be justified. It would be debatable, but not if Roe lied, expressive directly, and the person confesses it. I think it should be at least a bit more restrictive. A bit more restrictive. Not 100%, not 100%, but it should be much more restrictive. Um, when the life of the mother is in risk, of course, 100%. And like that, I have a look. Please tell me that you don't hate me by now, for example. And that, for example, I think it had a positive impact on society. The social influence of our Roman ancestors directly through Italy here in Argentina, for example. but yeah. For example, our current president, the current administration, it's libertarian, which leans a bit more socially conservative. But yeah, he doesn't get to that to the level of social conservatism that, for example, uh, a full-on inheritor of the Roman Empire would have, or those things like me, like Catholic Roman conservatism. People, I hopefully, I hope that you all don't hate me by now. That you all don't hate me by now. I have reasons, as I've said. The original case, uh, on her deathbed, Roe, for example, said that it was a lie, that it was instigated by the Democrat Party, and pretty much, uh, if the original case was a lie, one should ask oneself if the rest aren't, and pretty much the implicacies that it has. It was what we call a sentence in abstract, like pretty much um, the real life down to earth issue has been solved, but we still need to solve the theory. And well, I think sentences in abstract from a judicial standpoint should be much more controlled, because at the end of the day, you depend on the mental perception of those involved in the process of addressing the issue, the collision of two rights like liberty and life, like freedom and life, for example, and you are analyzing them in abstract because the real reason has already, the original reason has dissipated, because that's a sentence in abstract. Pretty much the original issue dissipated because in this case the abortion had already happened, and like that, a lot of other things, for example. And nowadays they say it's absolute freedom, and they don't take into account the risk that it poses to the biology of the person who practices that, or that it's a risk, that procedure, and etc. And they don't talk about the consequences of, for example, an anti-abortion pills or those things, for example, like that. And like that social issue, I think I think I was way too reckless and talked about the most controversial one out of all of them possible. But yeah, pretty much. And I don't bite people. I am not the bad person. I wish the best for humanity and precisely for women, but precisely I think that the core of human society is a family. I think it is a family, and I think that there's a tendency to try to destroy it nowadays. You know that we Italians have very, and by extension Argentina and Spain, we have a pretty different concept of family than, let's say, uh, the post-Protestant influence that it had in Europe, for example. Here, when a person reaches 18 years, which would be legal age to be an adult, for example, parents don't expect the person to go away from home and and live on his own. For example, university, you don't live at university at the university. I came back here to study. I studied here, where you see me. It's not, they are not an internship, precisely because of that. The concept of family, it's strong and solid, just like in the old Roman Empire. It's the most solid out of the whole planet, if you think about it, because it's exactly like in the Roman Empire, and I think that's highly positive. Why? It's one of the most interesting topics about Roman culture and how Italy and Spain inherited them.